Because an industry is legal, that doesn't in any way make it moral. It's not that long ago it was legal to send children up chimneys. Almost every grotesque atrocity which has taken place over the last century or so has been done by governments who would argue it was perfectly legal at the time. So I think even if the industry is legal, that doesn't in any way make it moral. People will say the arms trade is just another legal, legitimate business. And we're certainly right that it's a business. There's huge sums of money in it. But it's not in any way legitimate to be arming human rights abusing dictatorships around the world. I mean, 2/3 of UK arms exports are going to the Gulf. 2/3 of UK arms exports are going to dictatorships. We're seeing some of the most brutal regimes in the world are being tooled up with UK weaponry, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's Bahrain, whether it's Pakistan. We're now seeing growth in Turkey as well, where the government's just secured a £100 million fighter jet deal. And the end result of this isn't just to provide military support for these terrible regimes, it's also to send a strong message of political support as well. The message it sends out is that the UK believes these are legitimate governments and that the UK is going to endorse them and sell them the means with which to kill or repress people. I mean, we often hear about how vital the arms industry supposedly is for the economy, but we should really question that, because at present only 0.2% of jobs in the economy are in arms exports. And when you look at arms exports as a total of UK exports, manufacturing exports, it's only about 2%. And even then we have to factor in that about 50% of that will actually be parts of components made in other countries. So it's actually, some of the stats are very misleading. It is, however, also an industry which enjoys a totally huge level of support from government, whether it is the existence of the Defence and Security Organisation, which is a 130 strong civil service body that exists for the sole purpose of promoting arms exports abroad, whether it is the support which civil servants and ministers lend to events like the DSEI Arms Fair, which takes place in London every 2 years, major arms industry events, or whether it is the fact that Theresa May and her colleagues will quite happily make representations on behalf of arms companies to foreign governments and dictatorships around the world. It's a very small sector of the economy, but it's one which has a totally disproportionate voice in the corridors of power. DSEI is one of the biggest arms fairs in the world, and it takes place every 2 years in London. It brings some of the most brutal and repressive regimes in the world together with all of the world's biggest arms companies. It's a carnival of the grotesque, where participants and buyers will be greeted by UK civil servants, glad-handed by government ministers, and chaperoned around to meet with as many arms dealers as possible. It's a celebration of all things militaristic, and if you were able to get in, you would see yourself surrounded by guns, tanks, parts of fighter jets, everything really. It's one of the biggest arms fairs in the world, and it's one which is done with the full support of government, the full participation of Whitehall behind it. And in fact, it couldn't happen without the support of government. Very lot of money gets put into it, because for the arms companies, this will be one of the biggest events on their calendar. The arms industry does enjoy a subsidy from the public purse. It's hard to quantify exactly how much that is, although some estimates range from 150 million a year to 700 million a year, because actually it's an industry which there is a huge amount of government resources go into. But also we have to remember money which goes into underwriting major deals if they fall apart, in terms of the export credit finance. So there is a lot of money and support goes into it. In terms of whether DSEI has specific public subsidy, certainly the policing is paid for by the public, and certainly the civil servants who will be in attendance and helping to chaperone around arms dealers and push for arms exports, they will be getting paid for as well. We have seen arms companies, there have been accused of promoting illegal torture equipment before, but it's not just about individual bits of equipment and about individual companies. It's about we have to think about the entire event. The fact that the event is taking place is terrible. It's an atrocity. It's something which all polling shows the people of London don't want and people of the UK don't want. But what it does do is it will bring some regimes with absolutely appalling human rights records to the east of London to buy as many weapons as they possibly can from as many arms dealers as can possibly make it. That's not something we think the UK should be hosting, and we don't know how these weapons might be used further down the line. But that is a large part of the problem. The lifespan of weapons is very often longer than the lifespan of governments, or even the lifespan of a political situation they're sold into. There's an interesting piece of research which came out in, I think, 2015 or 2016 by Amnesty International, looking at where ISIS was getting its arms from. They found evidence of ISIS having weapons from over, I think it's 25 different countries, including the UK and including France, including other European countries. And the reason for that isn't because the UK is selling weapons to ISIS, it most definitely is not. But the UK is selling weapons into a region with unstable governments in conflict. And of course, once weapons enter that conflict zone, we don't know where they will end up. We don't know who will obtain them. We don't know who will use them or who they will be used against. We've recently seen Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, coming out against DSEI being hosted in London. And we know historically Jeremy Corbyn's been involved in protests against DSEI before, and we would hope that he continues to oppose arms fairs and events like that which bring dictatorships and arms dealers to the UK. And I think there's a point about we need to make sure that we are mobilising the broadest possible opposition, because it's only through mobilising public opinion that we can create change. During the week building up to DSEI, there's going to be major protests taking place every day outside the Excel Centre. The idea being to block the road to stop the arms from getting in, because if the arms don't get in, they can't host a very successful arms fair. So there's a full week of action with different themes for every day, with different groups taking part every day. If you go onto the Stop the Arms Fair website, you can see a full rundown of the events which are taking place, and get in touch with the groups who are putting them on and organising them. On the Saturday before DSEI, there will be a major protest which is going to bring everyone together for a full day of action against it. But of course, opposition to the arms trade isn't just something which happens in the build-up to arms fairs. And there's always different events happening all across the country. Because what we have to remember is that the arms trade may be a global industry, but almost every part of this country does have arms companies in it. They do have factories in it. There are actions taking place outside these factories or lobbying specific MPs all the time. There will be a lot of things which anyone watching this can get involved in. And the more people that do, the better the actions, the greater the opposition, and the more we can achieve.